Hey, this is Chris Crosby with Regenesis Group, and I wanted to take a couple minutes today and just talk briefly about how to help your family member that you've got concerns about whether or not they have a drinking or drug or substance use disorder or problem. So, before I jump into this, I just want to remind you that every person is different, every situation is different, and all of the circumstances that have led to a person going outside the scope of healthy and acceptable ways of building coping skills and mechanisms are different, and how they got to where they are is different. So, without getting any further, I just want to tell a little bit about my story. Initially, I had started to consume large amounts of alcohol to cope with a divorce that I'd gone through. And slowly but surely, over a couple of years of dealing with a nasty, drawn out um, not just divorce, but um, co-parenting situation that I had going on with two kids that I absolutely loved, my stress levels were off the chain. And so by the time I got to a point of where I realized I had a problem, it was a little bit too late to just up and stop. And so I'm just going to put a quick plug in for something that we call chronic attachment disorder. And the shortest way to describe it is that it is any behavior, way of thinking, actions, activity, whatever, um, that has become a part of who we are on a subconscious level. It's locked into our brains and supported by the reward center. We'll put a link in this video that you can access and go read up on that. The reason that we call it chronic attachment disorder is because it is something that we as a person have bonded to and become attached to. And so it fits the part of our brain that operates automatically. It fits the part of our brain that essentially tells us to breathe without us having to choose to breathe. And so that makes this whole area, this whole idea, completely different, on a totally different wavelength than having a view a loved one that they don't love their family enough, they don't care enough about themselves, even down to whether or not it's a moral or a spiritual issue. Those things are off the table as far as early discussion goes. In the beginning, we're in triage mode, and so we're at a point where we have to do what it is to get a person stabilized physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Those four components make up everything that fits into a maladapted person's coping skills, doing thing that is really seen by the family, having a hard time staying focused on work, not going to work, short fuse, intoxicated, can't function normally. And here's the big one: cravings or having to go use without it necessarily being a choice. And most people that you talk to, eventually, if you can ever get them to be fully honest about it, have found themselves in a situation where they're scared to death and they don't know how to get out of it, because now inside who they are, they can't separate the life they want to live from the substance or the usage that they have. And it's just this pull back and forth. So I say that because I'm really trying to appeal to a compassionate side, one that seeks to understand. And that's a big deal because of the fact that we're talking about, normally those of us that have been drinking or drugging have left some wake of catastrophic activity. We've done damage. It's like dropping an F5 tornado into the family unit, the work unit, into the culture, the community that we've been living in, and creating a giant mess. It's super hard to unravel that. So one of the things that we recommend in trying to help someone get into not treatment or therapy is to get them into a mindset of trying to make decisions that are best for them. And what we find most is that people that want to do that get pulled back into the chronic attachment disorder over and over and over again, because they don't deal with the physical aspect of what this does to a person. And then the mental and spiritual and emotional aspect that is tied so closely to importance. If I took your hand or mine, if you've ever used super glue before, it only takes a little bit of that stuff and then you can't get your fingers apart. Well, imagine putting your entire hand into something and you can't pull it out. Now you're stuck. What you're going to find is that most people that struggle is the ability to think clearly because hope is no longer there. And hope is not something that, when it gets in the dark times, that they are believing in the human, in our bodies, in our minds. Um, but it also takes away a lot of that damaging stigmas and the things that come along with a person feeling like they're not good enough, like they aren't putting enough effort in. It really doesn't matter how hard you try, you can't get over cancer or the flu or ta-da, I'm not diabetic anymore. It's a road of treatment and a way of changing a lifestyle. So what do we do with that? When we approach someone, one of the first things we do is we like to provide them with resources, if they're open to it, some videos and other things that they can look at and read. But the biggest thing is to be supportive and just ask questions. Hey, how you doing? Do you mind me sharing something with you? I've got some concerns I may have, and I really don't want to cause a big problem. Being able to go in and get them to invite you in more often than it's their call, it's their decision. What most of us are dealing with when we're in the pinnacle and the height of chronic attachment disorder is we're reaching up as high as we can and just grabbing onto something that we can hold on to keep our nose and our face above water and drowning. So getting a person into a mode so that they are willing to not accept input per se, even though that's probably going to be very necessary, is being receptive to having a collaborator and an advocate in their lives. Not somebody that has all the answers, that's somebody that's willing to turn and both look at the problem over here and put your arm around each other and say, no matter how dark it gets, no matter how much I don't understand, no matter how much I can't maybe even relate to the story, I'm here and we're going to look at this issue. And we're going to find a way to address it based on your speed and your understanding. That's super hard to do when you have somebody who's been acting out that's intoxicated or out of their mind. One of the things I tell family and friends a lot is that if you look at someone that has Alzheimer's or dementia and you start watching how they live their lives, how they engage talking wise, emotionally, how they handle things, it's very similar. It's scary for them when they do have moments of clarity. And then when they're out of their mind, it's very similar with someone that's been using heavily and is in the place where they're about to, if they haven't started losing everything, are going to be on that slippery slope to actually starting to lose everything. So with Regenesis, there are four main components that we talk about. One is building hope. That's the idea that I believe I can overcome this thing. And then the other two that are supported by the last is getting educated on what's going on, the physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional aspects of chronic attachment disorder, getting educated, understanding what tools and resources are out there, and getting equipped, and taking time to understand the tools and use them. When someone takes education and equipping and combines them together over time and gets success with those, they have confidence and they have what we refer to as empowerment. An empowered person can go and take the bull by the horns and take the reins of their lives. And even if they fall down, get back up. And they've got a program that helps them get back up because they're not focused on, oh my gosh, I got this many days that I didn't do something. We don't even count days with Regenesis. What we do is we count building the kind of life that you want and laying out a groundwork for getting you into your God-given purpose, living your passions out and finding the right place to do that. All of those are a part of my story and how I ended up kind of going down the wrong road. I had all three of those in a job that I had worked in, and in one swift, quick moment, all of that got ripped out from under me. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting kind of trying to find meaning in my life again. Fast forward a few years later, when I went through a divorce, boom, life blew up. Had no skills for dealing with emotional, just onslaught of what was going through my life and through my mind, and how I looked at my life and looked at my kids and who I wanted to be. So those four components, building hope. Without hope, we aren't going to move forward. There's a passage that talks about without a vision, the people perish. And that's really what happens if we don't have a clear direction of purpose, and something that's calling out to us to be bigger than what we're in right now. We won't move forward. And then when we have that, we go and pursue getting education, understanding, equipping, tools to use, and then empowerment. Over time, very powerful process, very simple. When you fall off or have a hiccup, maybe even not even pick up again. Maybe it's just you ran into, I don't have to worry about what somebody else did, because no matter how hard the wind blows or whatever circumstance comes down onto me, I have a program that somebody else told you that you needed to change. So as we interact with individuals that are in the middle of it, if you give them space and you give them time to talk about what's going on in their lives, you don't really have to push a lot and tell them you're being a bad dad or a bad mom, a bad employee. They will, if they feel safe, open that door up. And then that's your opportunity to say, hey, I'm willing to learn too. So the same with all the things that I mentioned in regards to the individual with hope all the way to empowerment is the same for the family and for the loved ones. For all of us, the more equipped we are in realizing that individuals are individuals and giving them their God-given space to lean in and grow, the more opportunity we're probably going to have a voice with them and be able to impact them. So with that, I just want to close out a couple more thoughts as you're interacting with a loved one. For someone who's in the middle of struggling, they know, 99.9% of people know that that's not what life was created for, and they want more. And so going down that road of just asking them, always think 7 questions deep. If somebody says, hey, yeah, I'm really trying to, do better at work. Well, tell me about that. What does that actually mean? And why is that important to you? When they answer that and say, oh, okay, I can see where you're coming from. What are the things that you think would help you be successful in doing that? Let them fill in the blank. And then if they bring up things where it fits, to ask them, well, why is that important to you? How does that fit? There are always opportunities to be more curious. All of us are working on that. And I think that's the biggest thing. If somebody can tell that you're genuinely curious and concerned and want to give them not the freedom to live into your picture, but the freedom to live into the picture that they haven't even figured out yet, and the mess that's going on around them, and they're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's their problem and their challenge to figure out anyway. Because most people don't have somebody that can live with them every day and move in with them the same way that they would someone with Alzheimer's or dementia that needs that every single day, hour by hour. It's really not the goal. The goal is empowerment. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. And then if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot those over to me. I'll do anything I can to answer those and help you be supportive of your family and your family member.